Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan. Today we are breaking down the Chicago Bears 2024 offseason. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Bears changed their entire organization, essentially, it seems. So it's going to be fun breaking down the departures, the acquisitions, reviewing their draft picks. Then at the end of the video, Ryan and I, we're going to break down their 2024 schedule and give our record prediction for the Chicago Bears this season. But before we get into that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the Tracy Take, and also ring that bell to get notified whenever we create new content. We're currently in the middle of our offseason recap series, and we have videos coming out Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So ring that bell to get notified when other NFC North offseason recaps come out, or just any other videos that come out throughout the rest of the year. So anyways, Ryan, let's pull this screen up here. So these are the 2023 offseason stats that we got from Pro Football Reference here. These are the team stats. And interesting, I'm just looking at these stats, and like I feel like they don't truly represent how good the defense got, and then also honestly, then too, is about how good that offense did get in the second half of the season. I think they started off slow, particularly like in the passing game as well. But I think Justin Fields and the team improved later on in the season, but just couldn't get some wins. Browns game, for example, like they blew that game. But one of the top rushing teams makes sense with Justin Fields. That was there. Defensively, I think it's even better representation, as especially in the passing game. They gave up just some amazingly awful performances early on in the season. I have the results up here. Gave up multiple 400-yard games to start off the season, but then they really turned things around in the second half of the season. With a lot of games, even teams weren't even getting 250, maybe 275 total yards. They had a couple of games where teams barely got into 300, but a lot more consistent performances after trading for Montez Sweat, and that secondary definitely matured a lot. So that's going to be fun to kind of be revisiting like what their current defensive depth chart is. But Ryan, when you look at these stats here, what are like kind of some of your initial thoughts on the Bears 2023 season and kind of leading into that 2024 offseason?
Yeah, and I think so. Going back to the offensive side of the ball, I think the biggest thing for me was just the inconsistencies that they had. I think you look like they had some dud performances, like against Kansas City, only putting up 10 points, but then a few weeks later, going up against Washington. Granted, I get Kansas City was one of the best defenses. Washington was definitely not. They put up 40, but even then, you go look a couple weeks after that Washington game, they put up 30 on the Raiders, who ended up the season with one of the best defenses in the league, and then. Like they had some really close games. They just weren't able to eke them out. You mentioned the Browns game. The Green Bay game was 17-9 at the end of the season. They put up 37 on your Falcons there at the end of the year. And so to me, the beginning of the season was just plagued by these inconsistencies, that they would have these really, really good games and then really, really bad games. And that's, to me, why the stats look the way they did. Especially, I think when you look, they had a bye week in week 13. After the bye week, they put up 28-17 to the Browns, who had a top defense, but then 27, 37, and then 9. So they won 3 of those 5 games. And the 2 that they lost was when they were held to 17 against the Browns and then 9 against the Packers in week 18. Well, both of those teams are really good defenses.
Well, to be fair, they should have even beat the Browns. So it kind of goes back to your point about just inconsistency. And I think, too, is when we get to the departures here in a second, but I think it was looking back on it now and then kind of reviewing it, it made sense why certain decisions were made to move on from players, also considering, too, where they had positioned themselves with some serious luck, thanks to Frank Wright, in the draft, on knowing that they can go and get certain players as well. And that's what I think is going to be really interesting, is there's so much potential for this team now in 2024, where I also think, too, going to need to taper the expectations a little bit, just because they are still rookies, still a young team all around, and so it's like it's going to take some time to get there. But that being said, though, the Green Bay Packers were a super young team in that second half of the season. They were probably the best NFL team out there. So maybe give these Bears team till middle of October, end of October, and then who knows, maybe like the world will be their oyster and they can just go and dominate everybody in the second half of the season. So
especially
last
thing I was gonna say, this defense was really good in the second half of last year. In the first 8 games the first 4 games, they gave up 38, 27, 41, and 31, which bumped their averages up a ton. You look again, last 5 games, they gave up 13, 20, 16, 17, 17. That's a really good average, especially when you compare that to the beginning of the season. So,
well, and that's what I was saying too with that defense. Like, I felt like the defense
Yeah.
got a lot better overall, especially into like
Yeah.
the passing numbers. I feel were very lopsided because of their early season performances. Even too, I think in the first 3 games they only had 47 total points as an offense, and then and they gave up 38 plus 27 is 65, and then another 41. So then they gave up 106 points, if my math is correctly, during 3 weeks. So I think it was very lopsided overall performance because of how poorly they were playing at the beginning of the year. But this second half team, especially this defense, like I'm looking at this team being a potential top 10 defense. And so it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
We have the depth charts for both sides of the ball. We'll be breaking that down here in a second. But let's quickly go over the departures here. Lucas Patrick moved on, but the biggest one obviously is going to be Justin Fields being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's kind of obviously what we alluded to early on. The big kind of change of that was essentially the whole offseason debate. Really honestly started like a week 14 when everybody knew the Panthers are probably going to have the number 1 overall pick because they're the worst team. Which, thanks to the Bryce Young trade, Chicago had that pick. So it was that back and forth really for months up until I would really say the combine. Then when it was like pretty definitive, like, okay, this guy is going to be traded because they're going to go with Caleb Williams here. And so Justin Fields, it's going to be interesting to see how his time in Pittsburgh shapes up because I think he has an opportunity here, but also too, from what I've been reading at OTAs, he's probably been the biggest loser from those like that early set of training camps. As he's not performing supposedly at his best. So maybe it was a good thing, obviously, that they moved on. And Bears fans, I would be excited too to have Caleb Williams over Justin Fields. Like I would take him because his floor as of right now, I think, is where Justin Fields is currently at after being in the league for 3 years. I think that there's big improvement, and so we'll get to that in a second. But then some other guys here, Cody White here, Justin Jones, Robert Tonyan moved on, Equanimeous St. Brown. Not really too many guys that are really that big. The guys to me, the only real big guy, I would say Justin Fields. Moving on from Lucas Patrick was pretty solid. Moving on from your center, but they found some replacements for him.
Yeah. So let's just honestly, there's not really too much to touch on here, which is a good thing for Bears fans. So let's move on to free agent signings. Starting off with a big one, Brett Ripien getting a new backup quarterback in there, but bringing in DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Dante Pettis, 3 offensive linemen there, or 4 offensive linemen, Gerald Everett and a tight end as well.
Ryan Bates they traded for from the Bills, and we'll see here in a second. He's currently slotted into be replacing Lucas Patrick as the center.
Yeah. But then Kevin Byard and Jonathan Owen, some depth on the back end of this defense as well. And then only 5 draft picks. However, they made them count with Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, Karana Megdege, Torrey Taylor, and then Austin Booker. All in the top 150, 2 in the top 10. So all in all, I actually really like the improvements that they made. This was already one of the best rushing teams last year. They go out, they get DeAndre Swift, who had a good year in Philly. Keenan Allen is going to be a really good, reliable veteran receiver for Caleb Williams to throw to. Replace some of that offensive line loss, as well as go and get other guys to create depth and competition on the back end of it. I think for what the Bears had, I think this was a very successful offseason.
It was very successful. That's what it sounded like you said.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But I would say absolutely. I mean, whenever you have the first overall pick and you get 2 picks in the top 10, it's kind of hard to not be excited unless if you just absolutely butcher the picks. But as a Falcons fan, it's a joke. But the I would say like you go in and even to the Keenan Allen point, love that addition of Keenan Allen, and so now you're setting up your rookie quarterback for the best success possible because you have a great receiving room for him. You have a great offensive line, or a much improved offensive line. You got some veteran running backs in the backfield for him. You got a much improved defense over what it was at this point a year ago, and probably only going to get better. Like I couldn't think of a better situation for a rookie quarterback to come in to. That was like first overall pick because normally teams are crap. Like they're not.
They're the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, and you're going to have to suck it up for a year. But yeah, even some of the defensive pickups. I mean, I do like Kevin Byard and Jonathan Owens. I think there could be some good competition there, but Kevin Baird's going to be currently slotted in right now to be the starter strong safety. And so, but in general, though, they kind of made a lot of their offseason moves, so to say, on the defense side of the ball with the moves that they made during the season, like trading for Montez Sweat, for example. And so they've also made a lot of good additions with Tremaine Edwards and TJ Edwards in last year's offseason, getting a good linebacking core as well. And then just drafting well in the draft puts in the secondary. So there wasn't too much really necessary to be done. I think they added exactly on all the weaknesses for the Bears team to help like protect Caleb Williams and give him people through. I think that was their biggest thing that they needed to improve on outside of establishing their quarterback position.
Yeah. So all in all, I like what they did. Let's get into their depth chart here. So starting out on the offensive side of the ball, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen. I know Rome Odunze is a rookie, but this has to be one of the best wide receiver trios in the league.
I mean, jury's still out, but I would agree with you. Like, I would put this up next to anybody. We'll have to kind of see how it actually does. But
yeah,
I feel confident 4 or 5 weeks into the season that they're producing the numbers like how we think they're supposed to be producing them. And be absolutely changing my opinion to be absolutely this is one of the top receiving rooms. And that's kind of what, like, when we saw the Keenan Allen trade, we're like, this is perfect. You know, like that already alone was perfect for him. And then if they maybe got another receiver in free agency, or instead of best case scenario, Rome Odunze fell to them, and you go and get this guy because Keenan Allen's going to be a stopgap. I mean, maybe he'll want to sign for one more year if he really likes being there and wants to win a Super Bowl. But he'll probably move on to probably the next highest bidder at the end of the season, which could still be the Bears. But even then, too, you're set up perfectly for success with Rome Odunze now having a year under his belt. DJ Moore is one of the more underrated receivers. I feel like that feels weird saying underrated just because everybody knows who he is, but he's just been on some awful Panthers teams. And even to his couple of years that he's had, or just the 1 year he had with the Bears, he did have Justin Fields thrown to him, so didn't have as much consistent success as we think he might have this year.
Yeah, and that to me, I think he is a true number one receiver. I don't know if he's in that like top 5 category, like with the Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, and those, but top 10, top 12 for sure. I think he's definitely in that range. So this is a great receiving room for Caleb Williams to be thrown to. I also think this is a great offensive line to be in front of Caleb Williams. You have Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Ryan Bates, Nate Davis, Darnell Wright, their first round pick from 2023. So to me, I think this offensive line is also really good. They were one of the best run blocking offensive lines last year. They did a decent job keeping Justin Fields clean. They did give up, I think 26. They were 26th with 50 sacks on the first slide. I don't remember off the top of my head, but
that's 30, I believe.
They gave up 30.
Gave up 30. Oh, sorry. 26 and they gave it 50. Sorry, I thought defense.
No, sorry. This offensive line, they could improve in that. I do have a slight feeling that maybe Justin Fields was a big contributor to some of those sacks at the very least. So if they can keep Caleb Williams slightly more clean, I think that is fantastic. Also, one of Caleb Williams' biggest traits coming out of USC was just his ability to avoid the pass rush and create outside of the pocket as well. And so I think that will help there. Cole Kmet just add another great pass catcher to that pass catching room. Then you have DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson, 3 running backs that are very good, all have different skill sets. Like, this offense is fantastic. You said it on the last slide, but I want to reiterate. This is not your typical number 1 overall pick team. This was a team that was really a playoff caliber team at the end of last year that just happened to get the first overall pick through a lucky trade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's even too. We can go back and look at several games through the Bears season that if they would have just played, if they didn't blow the game, they would have been 10-7 instead of 7-10. You know, the Broncos game early on in the season, the Browns as well. I think there was even another one too that we go back and look at. But this team, started to build that foundation, and the vast majority of that foundation is still there, and they've even found good pieces to improve on. The thing for me, and you kind of walk through the lineup as well. The thing for me, just looking at it right now, is just kind of who the starting center is going to be. They did trade for Ryan Bates, but also Coleman Shelton played in 97% of the snaps last year with the Los Angeles Rams. So I think that's going to be a battle because you want to have a good, consistent guy under center, especially too with your rookie quarterback. But if they figure that out, I mean, their offensive line is vastly improved as well. From signing on Nate Davis, drafting Darnell Wright last year, Tevin Jenkins, when healthy, is one of the better left guards in the league. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that center battle. But in general, though, yeah, there's I couldn't think of a better situation for a quarterback to come into in his rookie year.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's get on to the defensive depth chart here. So starting off, this front four: Montez Sweat, Andrew Billings, Gervin Dexter Sr., and DeMarcus Walker. I believe, was he signed on from Tennessee last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
I just he wasn't in our edition, so I'm assuming it was from last year. But
yeah, he had 3.5 sacks last year.
Yeah. So a good front four there. I think where this team really invested a lot in last year's free agency, where I think they really improved this year throughout the season, was that second level with the linebackers, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Both of them got big contracts in 2023. And I think hopefully they continue to pay dividends for them in 2024 as well on this defense.
Yeah, it'll be this defense is vastly improved. I would love to see them have a little bit more sacks. I will say Montez Sweat in the 9 games he played for the Chicago Bears had 6 sacks. He was a leading sack leader. So that's positive, but also concerning as well, just because you don't want it to be just that one guy. You want to have multiple guys being able to provide good pressure. But it's still that improvement. So if you can translate that then to over 8 games, he would have then probably had, over 17 games for a full season. He probably would have been on pace for, 11 sacks. I'll say 11, maybe 12 sacks during that time. So an improvement. And so that's just going to be, I think it's going to be the one thing I want to see them work on is more consistent pass pressure, just to help out with the secondary that is getting better. But we've talked about this a lot on our channel, is I would rather have a dominant front four and an okay secondary than an okay front four and a dominant secondary. Because even the dominant secondary can only guard these NFL receivers for so long. If you're not getting that pass rush. And this is, once again, speaking as a Falcons fan, like with no pass rush over these past, seems like century. Even the guys who are good in our secondary are like, you just can't guard those guys for 6, 7, 8 seconds. Like, these guys are so going to get open. There's only so much they can do. I think that's one area I'd love to see them improve a little bit, because if they can get that with the improvements of the secondary as well, and even to adding on guys like Kevin Baird and even Jonathan Owens, just to have some good overall depth. And Kevin Baird's free safety. I said strong safety earlier. I apologize about that. But guys like Tyreek Stevenson, who had a great rookie year as well, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, and then Jalen Johnson. All these guys are super young. Still looks like Jalen Johnson should have re-signed a contract by now.
He was extended this offseason.
Perfect. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. But still very young. All these guys drafted in 2020 or later. And so they're only going to keep getting better as well. So that's where if they get a little bit more pressure on the pass rush. Actually, let me even check here to see what was their overall percentage, because they were second to last in sacks. They only had 30 sacks in the season. And then when it came to their pressures here, let me put their pressure percentage on in order. So they were 32nd, 31st, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26 overall in pressure percentages on the season. So less than 1 out of every 5 pass plays, they got pressure on the quarterback. And want to see that get picked up a little bit more. Hopefully that creates more turnover opportunities, because actually then on top of that, then they were that being said, they did have 28 turnovers last year. So you want to keep that number up as well. But that's me being very picky. I think this defense is still improving a lot. Offense is obviously improved now with Caleb Williams. It's just still a lot of those just unknowns because they haven't played a game yet. And so I think that's what's going to be fun when we get into that 2024 schedule and we actually start seeing them play these games. Like with their first week right here, I think it's going to be a fun one. Hosting Tennessee, I think that's going to be a really good game, because you're going to have in general, a pretty young team in Chicago overall. go up against, I would say, a unique team in Tennessee because you're going to have veteran receivers who are going to be going up against a younger secondary, but very athletic secondary. But then you're going to have a second-year quarterback as well going up against a rookie quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see. Kind of both organizations, actually, both organizations are almost kind of, I would say, in that same spot, that weird kind of unique. Have our young franchise quarterback here. We have great veteran receivers, that to throw to, but still trying to figure out their way how to like establish and be like the dominance in both their divisions. So I think that's going to be a very good game. It's going to be very telling to see. But then we got a true test week 2 at Houston, Sunday Night Football. It's going to be fun. Then at Indy, and then hosting the Rams, hosting Carolina, and then flying to London to play Jacksonville. So these first 6 games, pretty unique. I think a pretty solid test for all of them, playing some clear caliber playoff teams and then some clear teams that are like fringe playoff teams. That I think will be good tests to really see kind of how they stack up.
Yeah, I think for me, I had them going 2-4 through the first 6 games. Just at Houston, at Indy, the Rams those are to me are all tough matchups, especially for a team. They started slow last year. They're young. They might be figuring things out a little bit, especially with Caleb Williams. And then Carolina, Jacksonville. I think that's like they'll beat Carolina. Jacksonville's a little bit of a toss up. And so I think 2-4, 3-3 is where they'll be coming out of this range. But then I think you get into this middle column here in the middle of the season, especially they have a week 7 bye. Then coming out of the bye, they go to Washington and to Arizona. I think they should win both of those games. They play New England. They should win that game. Then you have 3 division matchups, all back to back. So host Green Bay, host Minnesota, at Detroit. And then to close out, you have a tough matchup at San Francisco. I think they'll probably go 4-3 through here. Like they should win those first 3 games coming back. I think they're better than all those teams.
Yeah, I would say watch out for Arizona. I think Arizona can be sneaky, but Bears could probably be favored in that. I think same with Washington. It'll be fun to see Caleb Williams go up against Jaden Daniels and then Drake May actually also too, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah, so 3 games in a row now to kind of it'll be a very interesting test for the Bears fans now to see like if Caleb Williams was the guy or if they should have stuck with Justin Fields and taken Marvin Harrison Jr. And so that'll be interesting to see. But then the 3 straight division games, and those can go anyway. I think that they should be favored against Minnesota, but even hosting Green Bay, I think that's going to be tough. And then at Detroit on Thanksgiving, I think is going to be a tough game as well. And then at San Francisco, that's the cream of the crop, I would say, for playing against the NFC team. So I think it's actually a pretty tough Final Four stretch there in this middle portion, even though I know Minnesota is probably the weakest of all of those games. It's still a division game. And so we'll have to kind of wait and see how they end up doing against them. But they're wrapping up the season. I think they have a pretty tough schedule as well at Minnesota for Monday Night Football. I think they could be favored, but still on the road for the division game in December. Then hosting Detroit, hosting Seattle, and then at Green Bay. This can be tough to have to go up to Green Bay and play in January. But still, as I said, it's good. I think are all 6 of their division games. Yeah, so all 6 of their division games are their last. There's 6 of their last 8 games are division games. So that's going to be very fun to go and watch for the Bears because they're going to know who they are. They're going to know their identity. They're going to be in rhythm as well. And these NFC North division games are always tight, are always tough, even when the teams are not that good.
And if you think about it from a perspective of this is a young team, especially with a young quarterback, I think you want, especially with how tough this division is, you want all those division games to be later because really those are the games that are going to really, really matter in terms of if you can win the division, making the playoffs and whatnot. So overall, I think this schedule is fairly favorable. They definitely have their fair share of hard matchups. Just also being in that division is hard. But let's get into our record predictions. So I went with 10-7. I'm fairly high on this Bears team. I think they remind me a little bit of the Buccaneers in 2019 into 2020 because they had a rough team at the beginning of 2019. but you saw some of the veteran receivers in this defense start to make plays at the end of the year. They made too many mistakes. They had too many bad plays going into the offseason. So what do? They revamped that quarterback room. They got Tom Brady, so that's a bit of an extreme. But they went out, they got Caleb Williams, hopefully fix some of the quarterback issues there. This defense should continue to grow into this year. And uh, I think this could be a really good team. I think they'll probably start slow with a rookie quarterback and will potentially be one of the top wildcard teams in the NFC this year.
I think that is a high possibility as well. I went with 9-8 just because of the unknowns. We've seen it. We've seen it both ways. Team makes a bunch of acquisitions in the offseason, great draft class. Oh my gosh, look at this! Look at the potential. These guys can win the division now. They're the division favorites, and they go 5-12. But we've also seen it the other way, where it's like I would say the Bills last year would be a great example. Like, what are these guys doing? They're going to tank. They're not going to tank. They're going to stink like fish tank. And so, like everyone, they're going to go 4-13, 5-12, and they go out and they win the division, and then should have been the Chiefs in the playoffs. Should have gone on and done great things in last year. Like they're still one of the better teams in the NFL. So that's where I think it's still a young team. It's still going to be a rookie quarterback, getting to know his receivers. One of the top receivers is a rookie receiver as well. Some concerns on the pass rush side, still a little bit for the defense, as I mentioned. Being picky, it's still going to be a really good defense, above average at minimum for this Bears team. I think 9-8 can still get you a wild card spot and still put you in the mix. I will say having 6 of their last 8 games be the division games, I think can help out a lot, because they definitely control their own destiny when it comes to that. They can stay within a game or two of the division title kind of when they get to that week 11 point. So I may be being a little bit more on the conservative, realistic side here. I could also make an argument for them to go 11-6. Like Minnesota's tanking, maybe Detroit's going to regress. Green Bay were really good last year, but what if they take a step back as well? Like, there's an opportunity. Like, those are the arguments I was making as well. And so I could see them going 11-6. I can see them still winning this division. It's just one of those. I want to see what's on the field. I want to see them prove it first before I start getting super hyped about the Chicago Bears team.
Yeah, and that for me, I just felt like the end of last year, this defense definitely proved something to me. And this offense, like if they played that whole in the last 5 games, if they played like that throughout the entire year, where would they be? And I think 10-7, 11-6 is probably where they would have been. So it's really interesting to me. This division is loaded. Even like I think Minnesota. Spoiler: if you haven't watched the Minnesota video yet, it should be released the day after this one. But I think Minnesota is going to be like 5-12. I think they're the worst roster in this division by a fairly wide margin. Rookie quarterback as well. This offensive line isn't that good. You look at the defense, and if Brian Flores was not there, this would be by far the worst defense in the league. I think he knocks them up a few spots just because I think he is a really good defensive mind. But again, they don't have anything. So I like this team. I think that they could be really, really good, and I'm excited to see what they do.
So, oh yeah, there's absolute possibility that they can be. I don't want to think I'm selling the Bears short.
Yeah,
it's just one of those to be like, there's still that development period. There's still that transitional period. And potentially too, they start off slow, just like how Jordan Love and the Packers did last year, and then they just turn it on the second half of the season because something clicks.
Yeah.
So it's a long season. I mean, shoot, it's still where it's towards the end of June, and it's still 6 months from now the regular season will be wrapping up. So like we're still a long ways away from seeing kind of how good the Bears can be this year.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and wrap up this one here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Chicago Bears offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.